You were listening to Foxfire Farmhouse, the podcast. Episode number 1. One day you will be sitting with your friends, sitting in the living room watching a movie, and someone's going to say something that's going to make you think of the Foxfire Farmhouse podcast, and you're going to say, I was one of the ones listening to the very first ever episode of Foxfire Farmhouse, the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And then all your friends will say, what is that?
Yep. What exactly?
What exactly?
What is a foxfire?
A foxfire is the term for bioluminescence.
Oh.
So when you have something lighting up, glowing in the dark naturally, like decaying wood or trippy mushrooms in the woods, then that's what they call bioluminescence. And so we are cultivating light in the darkness through a podcast. Which is another way of saying maybe we are growing mushrooms.
Yes.
Just not exactly.
We're growing spiritual mushrooms here.
Spiritual mushrooms.
Welcome to the Spiritual Mushrooms Podcast.
All right. Well, we probably should introduce ourselves a little bit. So I'm sitting here with Mr. Elijah Heyman.
Hey.
You've probably heard his movie reviews around the water cooler, or maybe in the car.
Yeah.
Or
around the church.
In the backyard at the church. Yep.
Yeah.
So
I get around.
Yeah. He's been widely had some wide fame, critical acclaim for his movie reviews, and that's why he's here on the Foxfire podcast.
I'm the guest.
So tell us about yourself, Elijah. 10 words.
I can't be limited by 10 words.
My vanity does not know.
knows no bounds.
10 words.
Yeah, characters. Yes, that is a spider. Yes, as you said, my name is Elijah. Sometimes people call me Eli. However you want to go with that. I am a dad of 2 kids at the moment. I got a third one on the way.
Sweet.
Yeah, I've been married for getting close to 4 years now to a beautiful lady named Abby. And I like to watch movies and like to review them. Not obviously, but I'm a Christian. Love the Lord with all my heart, and member of a local church, and love to talk about the Word of God, learn about the Word of God, and do a lot of different things.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Well, my name is Josh. I also go to the church that he goes to. And we live in Bremerton, Washington.
Undisclosed.
And a church in an undisclosed location.
That we gave away.
Yeah, we're not in China.
Yeah.
So, I like movies too, and I like to think about movies, and that's what we're going to do in season 1 of Foxfire Farmhouse, which is going to be a podcast focused on storytelling, digital media, all sorts of places where those two things meet. And so for season 1, we're going to focus a lot on movies and talk a little bit today about why movies matter. But before we do that, we want to start each episode with sharing something that we have found helpful, fun, exciting, something cool stuff that we want to share with you.
The coolest things.
Yeah, only the coolest things
Yep.
for the podcast audience. So what is your cool thing today?
I think one of the things that I've been getting into, I've been in hiatus from internet because my house won't have it for a whole month.
Elijah has recently moved.
Yes, I just moved, and they have to run a line to my house, and it's really inconvenient.
Wow.
So I've been stripped of my powers of Netflix and any streaming service and left with my pillaged DVDs.
Back
to
the dark ages.
Yep, I'm putting discs in. My kids are taking the discs out. It's a lot of fun.
Discs are scratched now.
Yeah, they're irrecoverable.
You can only watch half of any movie.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. But through that, I started watching some of The Dark Knight again. Always a joy to watch that series. It's so good. And because we've been, Josh and I have been reading Tale of Two Cities, I just been remarking on similarities between the two Dark Knight Rises in particular and Tale of Two Cities.
Yeah.
It's just been wonderful.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So in preparation for watching Denis Villeneuve's rendition of Dune, I have taken to the book and read volume 1.
Nerd.
I think there's like 6 books, and it just sounds insane.
Many side books too.
What? Oh,
There's
really?
a lot of side books.
Oh, wow.
Not written by him.
Yeah. So I think there are 6 that are proper to the story.
Yeah.
But I read the first one, and I really enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
It was good. It people say that it drags a little bit, and it does. But if you enjoy what he does when he drags, then it's a great book for you. So
Sounds
it was
awesome.
wonderful. I liked it.
I enjoy that more in a movie than I do a book.
Yeah. I'm really excited for the movie because I love
Yeah.
Denis Villeneuve's work.
Did you watch the new trailer for it?
I did. Yeah.
It's a bit more quirky and funny than I expected.
Yeah.
It's not as like stoic.
Yes.
So.
And yeah, I remember reading some not skepticism, but just some what is the word? Some guesstimation about why that is. And that has to do with the other writer that came in to help Denis, and I forget his name at the time, but or I forget his name right now. So
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I'm really stoked for the movie because I
Me
really
too.
like Denis and the movies that he does. So I think it's going to be really good. So let's talk about movies. So
Yeah, there you go.
You know, we're talking about Dune, and we like movies, and this whole podcast season is going to be all about movies.
Oh yeah.
So why do movies matter? Do they matter? Are they simply a waste of our time, or are they something that are worth real cultural engagement? So is a podcast like, maybe the bigger question is really just trying to validate our own existence. Should we exist as a podcast?
I hope so.
And should we exist as something more than entertainment? That's the bigger question, I think.
Yeah.
Are movies just entertainment? And if they are only entertainment, does a podcast that's trying to analyze them and think through them, does that actually carry any kind of validity or importance
Yeah.
outside of entertainment? Or is this podcast simply entertainment?
No, I think that movies do matter. Obviously, we're making a podcast about it, and we found
Right.
some value in film.
So do movies matter? Well, we're doing a podcast about it, so obviously they do.
Yes, they do.
Yep. All right. Case closed.
Boom.
We'll see you in episode
The
2.
end.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of trepidation or fear about whether or not movies are important, especially to people like us who are trying to live for an eternity. We are trying to give attention to things that really matter in this world,
Yep.
And not be diverted by things that are that are simply useless or distractions from what we are actually called to be as humans. And so we want to think through what movies are in a way. We want to make sure that we are not wasting our time with movies.
Yes.
And so I think that the burden of proof is in some ways on us to prove that movies actually have value. And I would say, first of all, I have 3 reasons why I think movies matter.
Oh, 3
And I would
reasons.
say, first of all, movies matter because people matter. That's where
very
I'd
true.
start.
Yeah, people matter. People, obviously, a lot of people put together to make a movie. A lot of money went into that movie, and that doesn't get put together for nothing.
And there's a value, even when we look back on other civilizations and other cultures.
Mm-hmm.
What we do is we dig up what they had at the time. And because we don't have the technology to play the movies that they made, we don't see their movies.
Yeah.
But we are taking the cultural artifacts that they have made,
Yeah.
and we are trying to analyze them to see, what did they believe? What did they think? How did they live? And movies give us an insight into our own culture to say, who are we as a people and how do we live? What do we value?
Exactly.
So there's a cultural value to them that allows us to understand ourselves even more.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I agree with even just the practical value of the day to day in terms of the fact that the people around you matter. And I think if you can just look at like Jesus's time and the time that Paul lived in, and just throughout history, that when you see the stories that they choose to tell and the kind of colloquial language that they have, it's saturated with the culture that they're in, the stories that are told around them, so that like when Jesus tells parables or he goes through the eye of a needle, we have a hard time understanding what that means compared to the people of Israel, or like to faith to move mountains. What does that mean to the people of Israel as opposed to the way that we see it through American eyes? And just even in our culture today, we can sometimes, I've found that there's a lot of people who aren't very well versed in film or the kind of music or whatever, and they're outside of that media culture. And when they come into the like workforce, and people are just talking, it's really hard for them to get into that conversation and to understand what people are talking about and to take things wrong because they don't know where they're coming from, whether they're coming from a film or a song or a game that they played. It's hard to enter that conversation without kind of having some of that background.
I think a good example of how that works is when we watch movies from other parts of the world. So when we watch, just a minute ago off air, we were talking about the Japanese director and Akira Kurosawa, who made Seven Samurai and others like that. And when you watch a Japanese film or even a film from another time period, you are seeing a reflection of a different culture than your own.
Yep.
And you are able to see the world through the eyes of the filmmaker. And that gives you a certain amount of empathy that you wouldn't have had not watching the movie. And so I think that there's a value in that, not only to understanding cultures at a distance, but understanding us right now and where we are and what we value as a culture. And if you want to see kind of what our culture values, then what movies are we watching? Listen to the top 10 Billboard charts on iTunes or something like that to see what are the music that we are consuming.
Yeah.
What are the video games that are popular and are selling? What are the stories that people are consuming? And what do those stories tell us about how we feel about the world?
Yeah. There's nothing neutral.
No, not at all.
Everything has an edge to it for sure. And everything can be sharpened in a certain way as well to lean one way or the other in terms of the content that they carry.
Yeah. And in that sense, and we're going to get to more of this throughout the season, but in that sense, there is even a value to watching bad movies.
Oh yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean there are some movies that are so bad or morally corrupt that we shouldn't watch them. And there are certainly movies that some people would draw the line on that others wouldn't.
Yeah.
But there's a cultural value to seeing what people are actually creating, even if those are the stories that they're telling are portraying a very false and untrue view of the world. There's a benefit to understanding it, if for no other reason than to understand our neighbor and be able to love our neighbor better.
Exactly.
I think that number 2, move on to another reason why I think movies matter, and that is because stories matter.
Well, yeah.
And movies are primarily, unless you're watching some kind of abstract experimental film, movies are a medium for telling stories. They are just a different medium in the artist's tool belt to tell a story. And the stories that we consume, both, like we've just said, demonstrate what we believe, but also because they are an expression of a belief system, when we enter into that story and empathize with those people, then our own beliefs are being challenged, they're being refined, they're being bolstered, something is happening in us when we watch these films. And so those stories that we are telling really matter to how they shape us. They're catechizing us into a certain way of life, basically. Yeah. And so it's important to engage with them as a story and think through their value narratively.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, I mean, we just heard about this on Sunday, just about the fact that, like you said, like our stories are important and our lives reflect that. Our lives are a part of a larger narrative. And there's many arcs and many seasons in our lives. We always say the term like, "Oh, I'm just in a season." Like, obviously, shows have seasons for a reason, and you have these arcs that happen in them. And we have the amazing capacity as like Christians as well to understand that we are a part of that, and that we can actually act in that, and we can actually do things that are of benefit to our spouse or our family, and try to be that hero character. We have the capacity to do good now, to do righteousness, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, when we act in the world, very often the default position that we take, the default gut knee-jerk reaction that we make to any immediate stimuli in the world, we are not rationally thinking through, okay, logically I believe X and therefore I value this, and therefore I am going to do this. That's not how our brain functions. In the moment, when something happens. We see ourselves in a story.
Mm-hmm.
When someone pulls a gun on you, you're immediately going to see some sort of story in this situation.
Yeah.
They are the aggressor, or they are the robber, or they are the murderer, or depending on what your judgment of that person is, something is going to come, and that's going to inform what you must do. And your view of yourself in that story is going to inform, am I going to be Jason Bourne, or am I going to be, the random dude, the random banker who gets shot during the robbery? What character am I going to play in this moment?
Yeah.
And the stories that we have taken in are going to be what we act on, not necessarily the propositions that we believe. We're not going to always think through that. Now, when there's time to think, we will analyze our initial responses if we're being thoughtful. But the immediate reaction is going to be something more akin to what we've seen in the story, or what we think of who we are in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. There's a lot of, like you're saying, like interacting with stories, and we interact with stories every day, and we interact with stories about ourselves and our thoughts, and like, we can easily believe lies about ourselves, and in our imaginations, like you're saying in that moment, like, oh, this guy's gonna pull a weapon on me, like, well, I'm not that. Like, you can easily go, well, I'm an action hero, and so I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like you said, Jason Bourne it out of the way. But you can easily be in a day where you're like, I'm pretty down on myself. I feel lethargic. I feel like this. Therefore, I am this. And if anything like this happened, I'd just be dead.
Yeah.
Like you can easily tell yourself different stories about whether or not the validity of them is true. And the same thing with like when you watch a movie. You watch a movie and they're telling you a story as to what is good, what is true, and from the lens of the director and everybody who's a part of that film, they're all like, this character's good, this character's bad, and you can see their perspective on what goodness looks like to them, what a good leader looks like to them, what an evil, despicable person looks like to them, what a Christian looks like to them, what religion looks like to them, what like government looks like. Like you can hear their voice through the film, through visual storytelling, through the music, through all that stuff, and that's kind of the connector right there.
And that's going to be the basis in some ways of a lot of the things we talk about in the podcast, is trying to analyze those specific things in movies and say, what is this movie actually saying? Is it good? Is it bad? And we're going to do that through a lot of different movies and a lot of different characteristics of, or a lot of main themes. But yeah, so then I would say the last reason that I think movies matter is that beauty matters. And this idea is a little more difficult for me to explain because I don't exactly understand it all that well. But I have been, thanks to Roger Scruton and his book, it's called A Very Short Introduction to Beauty. And I think that basically the idea is that there are the transcendental values, the good, the true, and the beautiful. And these are things, when saying that they are transcendental values, they are things worth aspiring to for their own sake. There are other virtues or other aspects of life that you want to aspire to in order to achieve something else. But trying to be good or pursue goodness or to pursue truth or to pursue beauty, they are ends in and of themselves. And ultimately, they are a reflection of the God who is at the center of all that is, the creator, on the creator-creature distinction. And so all creatures are trying to be good or to be true or to be beautiful, but they are, in doing so, only reflecting the God who is good and true and beautiful. So if beauty matters and film is an aesthetic medium, it's something that has to deal with what is visually pleasing, then one of the ways that we can judge whether or not a film is good or bad or true or false is whether or not it is actually beautiful. And so there are some movies that are beautiful that aren't necessarily terribly aesthetically pleasing. The beauty is an interesting category because it's more of a spectrum. So there's objective beauty, but it is not something that this thing is entirely beautiful or it is bad. There's like a ladder of what is beautiful and what is not. And there are different types of beauty because there's a beauty to a grandma who doesn't have the all the physical features that she might have had when she was younger that made her very beautiful, but there's something about the way that she wears her age and the light in her eyes and the, you know, happiness that she has in life and her wisdom and her grace and her poise that makes her very beautiful. Even though in some ways we would say that her body is decaying, it's getting old. And so there's a type of beauty that is not purely aesthetic, that takes into account things that are not material. And I think that that's where beauty and truth and goodness start to merge, is that beauty is a reflection of something that's more than just the aesthetic, but it is certainly aesthetic.
Yeah. It definitely goes deeper than just the aesthetics. It goes into that dangerous realm of feelings that we like to stay away from in certain circles of Christianity. We don't trust our heart. Obviously, our heart is deceitful above all things, and so we generally stay away from all that like warms my heart or things like that. And just like that's one thing that I appreciate about like stories, and particularly like film, because it's a visual medium. It's an auditory medium. Like it's a very sense-based medium. It has the ability to be more visceral than reading a book.
Yep.
And more visceral than just listening to music. It's all of those things put together. It's words, it's music, it's picture, it's color, it's movement.
Right.
It's all of those things. And so it can evoke a lot of feelings. And there's movies like you're saying, there's movies that are beautiful, like, and just they're very plain looking movies. But the heart is so amazing in that movie, and just calling it the heart of a movie too. Like, what is the heart of a movie? When you're like, oh, like it just touches me in the feels.
There can be some movies that are even the low budget style that you would say aren't good movies by other definitions. Yeah. But that you look at when you know the story of the making of and how it came to be, and you see this piece of art in its context of the filmmakers. Yeah. You can say, okay, this is the widow's mite of their production. They gave everything that they had to this thing. Yeah. And it doesn't match the technical beauty that could be there if they had, $25 million to make this movie. But it has the heart, like you're saying, that beating heart of this is good. Yeah. A movie that recently I've watched, I say recently, it's been within the last year, on Amazon Prime, called The Vast of the Night. Have you watched that one?
No, I haven't watched that one.
It's a sci-fi movie set in a small town. It was, I think the town is actually some little town in Texas, but it's kind of the no-name town, and it's an old sci-fi genre film. Yeah. And it's small. The filmmakers were people who were involved in video production and had just been honing their craft, and then decided to make a movie and had been working on it for a long time. And it's this little film that doesn't have the big budget feel, but that has so much heart and is so good and so reminiscent of like 1960s sci-fi that it's beautiful. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing that I think can happen where you've got someone who is good at their craft, who puts a lot into it. There's a real solid heartbeat to the movie, but it's not the kind that you would say, hey, this movie had huge, big budget effects, because they're working within their limitations and they're doing a good job. Yeah, it's just the same thing. Like movies with big budgets, like that are spectacular fests, aren't necessarily beautiful movies, even though you can go, oh, wow, the effects are like so good. Yeah, they're so crisp, and they're the cleanest special effects I've ever seen, like Endgame, Avengers. Yeah, right. I would argue that it's just all fan service and it's not the greatest movie in the world. I love that movie so much because I'm a fan. And so it was made for me, and I enjoyed it. But objectively, storytelling is not the greatest in that movie. Yeah. That's fine. I can overlook that. But like what you're getting at is like a lot of times beauty has intent. Like there's intent in making something beautiful. A lot of times I think it's a lot of people set out to make beautiful things, and they try their best to make those things good and make them not necessarily go, oh, I'm going to make this movie like just like you're saying, like not aesthetically like beautiful, or because it's got that feminine kind of sound to it. Like if you watch the Lego Movie is a very well-made film, awesome, but I wouldn't like go, oh, that's a beautiful film, but it's a beautiful film because everybody that was a part of it loved Lego, and they loved telling the story, and from the actors to the directors, spinning off of each other. Yeah.
It's,
I don't know if we have a good excuse to come back to the Lego movie eventually, but we totally should because I
definitely should.
I love the Lego movie
Yeah,
and the Lego Batman.
I just finished watching the Lego Masters. Have you watched that show?
I have not.
Oh, it's so
No,
good.
is it really?
Yeah, it's the Lego building competition.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
welcome to our podcast about Legos now.
Yes,
we're going to turn. Episode 1 was all about movies. Season 1 is now done.
Yep.
Season 2 is beginning.
Yes,
And
Legos.
we're going to be back
Faith
talking
in
about
Legos.
Faith
Not
in
faith
Legos.
in Legos. Faith found in Legos.
Right. And somewhere there's some kind of big analogy about how we are all the building blocks of the New Jerusalem coming together. Foundations, yes, built on a solid
bricks.
foundation. The corner bricks. Okay,
It's taking it a bit far.
Before we get too far off into some kind of heretical idea
Yes.
about Lego bricks,
Back out.
we are gonna put a stop in that one.
Yeah. Okay.
But this has been our attempt at saying that movies matter, and therefore this podcast matters, or doing this podcast matters, I should say.
Yeah.
We'll leave it up to you, the audience, to decide if this podcast matters.
Yeah.
So does this podcast matter to you? If so, subscribe, send us some fan mail, some hate mail.
I would love some hate mail.
A pizza.
I'd love to go over that.
That would be awesome. We need some juicy hate mail.
Yes. Not ironic. Like, don't do it on purpose. Like, I mean, like, don't like
hate
our
us.
show and then write hate mail.
Yeah, please hate us.
Just genuinely hate us.
Yeah. We're trying
I don't
to
want
get,
disingenuine hate.
Yeah, we don't want any likes. Just if don't like our show, just dislike our show.
We just want strong opinions. We're either the
Yeah.
worst or the best.
Exactly.
That's it.
Love us or hate us. But if you're a lukewarm audience member, we're going to spew you out of our mouths. Just like that.
Yeah.
Well, this has been the Foxfire Farmhouse, the podcast. If you want to suggest ideas for further episodes, we will put those right in the trash can. But you can go ahead and send them anyway.
Yeah. We might recycle them.
Yep.
Without giving you credit.
Yep.
Just kidding.
You can send those to Josh at foxfirefarmhouse.com because that's a fake email address and you won't get there. But you can go to foxfirefarmhouse.com and subscribe to an email newsletter, and you'll be able to be alerted every time there's a new podcast episode. Also on the website, there are movie reviews, movie recommendations that will be ever expanding and ever increasing all time in continuum until the internet falls apart.
Yep.
So, if the internet has not fallen apart by next week,
Oh goodness.
we will
Everything's falling
see you
apart.
then. Hopefully not movies, though.
Hopefully, yeah.
And hopefully
we'll just keep.
Elijah's internet will be back on.
Yeah. Just give me internet. Everything else is fine.
Yep.
That's a bad idea.
Bye.
Bye.